Can you hear me, everyone? Hello, hello, everyone. Namaste and good morning, good evening. I am Manohara Khadka. I am country representative for International Water Management Institute, IWMI Nepal. I am also very much pleased to moderate today's seminar, webinar, Appropriate Institutional Modality for Grid-Connected Solar Irrigation Pump in Nepal. Warm welcome again to all of you. A brief webinar information. This week we are having a series of webinars under the STC supported and EMI implemented solar. This is the fourth webinar in the 6th webinar we had this week. One of the major objectives of the solar project is to enhance cross-learning among countries, and also with this objective in mind, we have organized regional as well as country-specific webinar this week. So in today's webinar, we focus on Nepal and discuss the future of solar irrigation pump in Nepal, SIP, especially in the context of grid connection of SIP. Grid connection of SIP is planned pilot in our solar project, in which we are responding to requests made by AEPC NEA to demonstrate the institutional modality and also effectiveness of such grid connection. So as we all know, Alternate Energy Program Center, AEPC is the nodal agency responsible for developing and promoting renewable energy technology in Nepal. AEPC has been promoting SIP, solar irrigation pumps, since 2016, as guided by Renewable Energy Subsidy Policy 2016, Subsidy Delivery Mechanism Guideline 2016 also. Since the start of its program in 2016-17, AEPC has supported nearly 1,400 SIP through its subsidy program and has contributed to raise national interest in SIP program. So subsequently, federal and as well as provincial local government are putting much emphasis on expanding SIP as a means to enhance access to irrigation. So far, Nepal has taken the off-grid route to solar irrigation, but the need for grid connection is being increasingly felt due to various reasons. Nepal Electricity Authority, NEA, along with AEPC and EMI are embarking on a small demonstration pilot to facilitate grid connection of SIP in Nepal. So in this context, in today's episode of the solar webinar series, expert, academic, policymaker from Nepal will discuss from international level also to discuss modalities, institutional modality, and future of grid connection to SIP in Nepal context. So we have a very much, we have to, in this context, we are honored to have our distinguished presenter, panelists from the government, academic, development partner, private sector in today's seminar. Let me welcome and introduce presenter and panelists one by one. First, I would like to welcome to Assistant Professor, Dr. Fisherman, Fisherman from Tel Aviv University, Israel. Very well welcome to Professor Ram. He is an expert in sustainable development. Ram research is focusing on empirical quantitative analysis of sustainable agriculture, water scarcity, climate change, with the emphasis on development countries. Is going to talk today about preliminary finding on the utilization installed SIP in Nepal. And second, I'd like to welcome Professor Vishnu, our second presenter. He is a professor of civil engineering water resources at the Institute of Engineering, Tribhuvan University, Nepal. By training, he comes from civil engineering, specialization in area of water resources, climate change. Before joining university, he was a water climate specialist and solar South Asia project manager for Nepal office at EMI. He has a national international experience, published widely his work, more than 50 publications in a peer-reviewed journal. Welcome to Vishnu Pandey. And we have a distinguished 5 panelists after presentation who have a rich experience of SIP in Nepal. I'll more warmly welcome to Madhusudhan Adhikari, Mr. Madhusudhan Adhikari, Executive Director at the Alternate Energy Promotion Center, Nepal. AEPC is the apex government body to promote renewable energy technology in Nepal. Mr. Adhikari has over 25 years of renewable experience, management knowledge, experience in renewable energy technology, services, government, private sector, development partner. So very warm welcome to sir. I would like to welcome Ranju Pandey, madam, whether she's not here or all. We're also having Miss Pandey, Ranju Pandey, who is a manager at the Power Trade Department of Nepal Electricity Authority, NEA. She has rich experience, knowledge about policy, legislation regarding the of grid connection of solar in Nepal. She has done research in this topic. So NEA, a bit of NEA is a government-owned vertically integrated power utility. It generates approximately 60% of total energy output in Nepal. So we are very much happy to have Ranju Pandey madam here. I'll also welcome to Resha Piya very much. Resha Piya is a renewable energy advisor at the British Embassy Kathmandu. She oversees Nepal renewable energy promotion program, leads UK-8 work in energy sector in Nepal. Resha has extensive experience in planning, design, implementation, providing technical leadership and evaluating renewable and rural energy project in Nepal. Very warm welcome to Resha Piya. We are very honored to have our representative from local government, Mrs. Kiran Kumari Thakur today. She is a deputy mayor from Gaur municipality, Rautar district, province 2. She has a extensive knowledge, experience of local development. Prior to joining political functions, she was very much actively engaged in community-based development. She has been leading different institutions on the ground. But not last but not least, I welcome to Anjal Niraula, CEO at the GAM Power. Anjal oversees company research and development and product strategy, including business development, design, and engineering. So he has helped to develop, install over 3 megawatt of solar across 3,000 projects in Nepal. He is currently focusing on building solutions that help smallholder farmers increase their yield with the help of solar agro-processing solutions such as water pump. So he was a Chevening scholar at University of Edinburgh, where he studies energy system. So with this very introduction, I'd like to request Dr. Fisherman to present his ongoing research work um, on the solar irrigation pump utilization that was installed by EC mode. The floor is yours. You'll have a 12 minute, you briefly present, and then after that, I'll request Professor Pandey. After two presentations, and we'll have a first round of discussions. Yes. So may I request present?
Sure, I'm just loading it.
Yes, please.
I hope this is visible.
Yes. Yes.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Namaste. Thank you very much for inviting me to join you. I'm speaking to you from Israel now. It's quite early in the morning, and I thought it might be interesting for you to know that I happen to be taking part in another workshop in southern Israel, which this is where this picture is taken. It's a real desert here. It's a very, very dry area. There is a huge abundance of sunlight. And in recent years, there's also been a lot of progress in utilizing this sunlight to generate electricity through PVs. So it's just like a nice coincidence. Also, it's funny, there's a huge amount of sunlight here. It's always sunny, but today somehow it's cloudy and rainy. It's a very extremely rare event here. So I don't know whether to take it as a good or a bad omen for the future of solar energy in the world. Let's take it as a good sign. But it's really a rare event, so not so much PV generation. But even though there's so much PV generation here, in one respect, they are behind Nepal. There are no solar irrigation pumps here. So that's something we have to work on. But with that, I just thought it would be interesting to share that with you. Let me just clean this just a second. For some reason, okay, there we go. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the results of some research that I've been fortunate to take part of together with Aditi, with Dipendra and Nabina that did a lot of the groundwork for this, and other people in ICIMOD, which also funded this work. And with Dan Oziel, who is a student at Tel Aviv University, who actually did most of the analysis. I'm going to very briefly show you over the next 10 minutes. So what we really want to try and look at through this research is to understand the prospects for making solar irrigation pumps viable from a market perspective, to understand under what circumstances can they really spread through market forces when these conditions will be met. And a very simple framework with which to look at that would be to write a very, very simplistic equation which balances the costs and the benefits from installing a solar pump. So the cost, of course, is just a simple one-time cost, which is, I just denoted it here as C minus S. C is the real cost of the solar pump. The entire cost is basically an initial upfront investment. S is the level of subsidy. We recognize there needs to be some subsidy, but of course, for real market scalability, we can't just rely on a very generous subsidy. So with the kinds of subsidies we are seeing now, for example, in some parts of India, where it's 80, 90%, are obviously not scalable in the long run. What we want to see is that the cost to the farmer, which is the real cost minus a modest subsidy, should be less than the stream of future benefits that the farmer will derive by using the pump, so that in order for the farmer to be able to repay the loan, that assuming the farmer can get the loan, or just for any kind of general investment, what you want to have is that the stream of benefits denoted here by BT, that's the revenue, additional revenue that the farmer would get from using the solar pump, discounted by the interest rate R at every year in the future. So that's just a very simple equation dictating that there should be enough revenue generated by the solar pump over time in order to be able to for the returns to justify the investment. So we need to make sure this equation holds. And there are two aspects to this challenge. One is to make sure that the benefits B are sufficiently large, right? And that with the appropriate interest rate R, which is actually realizable in practice. What does that mean? If we can achieve this equation with a certain interest rate R, we want to make sure that the farmer actually is able to obtain a loan with this interest rate in order to realize the potential profitability of the equation. So I see it like as having two challenges. First, to make sure that the pump is profitable on paper. And second is that there is the finances in place available to the farmer to actually realize that potential profitability. So the profitability is one aspect and the finance is the other aspect. And I just want to actually start with the second one, with the finance, very briefly, and not focus on that too much. And ask, is the finance available for farmers, for smallholder farmers, to actually be able to obtain and to obtain these pumps and with the proper interest rate? And the big question is, does providing smallholder farmers with this finance, is that also market viable? Meaning that are farmers repaying? Is there a financial model which will offer the smallholder farmers the very large initial investment, the loan for financing the pump, with the smallholders actually repaying it so that it's profitable for the bank as well? And that's a big question, because normally this kind of finance is not available to smallholders. And we know that the microfinance revolution doesn't really transform, doesn't really lead to economic growth. That's kind of the consensus from research. It's not the kind of loan you need to finance a solar pump by any means. We're talking about larger amounts. We're talking about a much more flexible repayment schedule. And this kind of finance is not normally available for smallholders. So the first result I want to tell you is actually quite encouraging, and the result of an experiment that the team funded by ICIMOD, as I mentioned, ran in the district of Saptari in the Terai, where we tried to randomly offer farmers in different, at that time, the district was still composed of VDCs. Different VDCs were offered different types of financial models. The first model was basically the benchmark model, where the entire sum had to be paid upfront by the farmer, meaning there's no finance provided here. And the other two models basically provided the farmer with a loan on a large part of this initial payment. In the loan model, the farmer had to pay a certain portion of that upfront, but the rest of it was available with a pretty flexible loan. And another model called the rental model, in which basically you can think of it as basically having a minimal upfront cost. So let's just focus on the division between having the finance and not having the finance. And the first question we wanted to ask, so on the left-hand picture, on the left-hand side, you can see a map of the VDCs of Saptari, randomly divided between these different financial models. And on the right side, you can see the results of the experiment. We basically checked how much demand did farmers that were offered these different kinds of financial models, how much demand did they show for purchasing a solar pump under these financial terms. And we measured that along the whole process, starting from an action like collecting a form, which shows initial level of interest, then making a deposit, and finally making the actual purchase. And along every stage of this process, we saw that in the VDCs that were offered the unusual, the kind of flexible financial model, demand was higher. So there is demand by farmers for these, and it increases demand for solar irrigation pumps, and it was much larger. In fact, out of the 20 pumps that were eventually actually purchased by farmers, 18, so almost all of them, 90%, were by farmers who were offered the financial models. So that shows us that even though the numbers are small, this was a very new technology. We mostly targeted, the most vulnerable types of farmers. So demand was still low in absolute numbers, but almost all of it came from those farmers who were offered the financial model. So that's great, but that's not the end of the story. The second question is, will these farmers actually repay the loans? Because mostly financial institution banks are reluctant to offer these kinds of loans to smallholders because of the concern that they won't pay the loan, back the loan. But here too, the results are encouraging, and basically almost everybody, 19, I believe, out of these 20s are repaying their loans on schedule. So these are very, very good news, I think, for the prospects of finance, of generous finance, not usually available to help power the diffusion of solar irrigation pumps. And I think we really urgently need to do more kinds of studies like this with bigger, with demand grows, to really understand how reflective this result is of a more general finding. So that's as far as the finance goes. Now let's talk a little bit about the profitability, where we actually are surprisingly encountering more challenges. So how do we get solar pump owners to really make the pump profitable? Well, it's actually really simple. Once the upfront cost has been paid, you're basically getting free electricity as long as sunlight is available. So what we would like to see farmers do is utilize the pump as long as there is electricity, meaning as long as there is sunlight, and using it all the time to generate economic value from the water that they pump. Very simple. But for some reason, we are seeing that not really happening in the field. Our results come from a sample of 53 solar irrigation pump owners, including the ones we just discussed. for which we have this really, a lot of effort has been put by the field team to make sure that these farmers report on a daily level over a period of 2 years. They really report day by day the amount of hours they've used the pump for, the amount of water they've been pumping, and for which crop. Okay, so it's a data set not usually available to really know on a daily basis from 50 farmers how well they utilize the pump. And the first disturbing finding I want to share with you is that the farmers are on average very far from using the pump continuously all the time. That means that a lot of the time the pumps are lying idle, not realizing their economic potential. On average, the average farmer in our sample only utilized the solar pump 40% of the time in which they owned the pump, only 40%. There's a distribution. Some farmers use 90% of the time, you can see, but those are very few, 5% of them. Some hardly use it at all. The average is 40%, and this was a surprising finding for us, discouraging finding, and we have to try and understand why. Here you see the results plotted continuously over time. And in case you think, oh, maybe this is why when there's no solar radiation, etc., just look at the summer season, which are labeled here in green. So what you see in this graph is the percent of the pumps that are used out of those 50 in every particular date. And you see that even in the summertime, when sun is abundant, it doesn't go up above 75% at most. When it's rainy, obviously it goes down, sure, but there's a lot of time when there is sunlight and the pumps are not being utilized. And that's, very puzzling because the cost is zero. Why are the farmers not utilizing the pump? I just also here in this graph, you can see how usage differs by the crop being used. And you can see that by every metric. I'm sorry, I'm rushing through this, but the bottom line of this, if you compare, the farmers use the pumps for aquaculture, for fish farming. They use it for growing paddy, pulses, vegetables, and wheat. And as you might expect, for example, if you look at the top left-hand side, the number of hours used for fish farming is in the course per hectare in the course of a season is largest for fish farming, most intensive water user, followed by paddy, followed by pulses and wheat, as we might expect. So farmers who practice aquaculture use more, but they still don't reach maximum utilization. And what could be going on? And we need to understand what are the barriers to full utilization. And there's a few possible explanations we can consider. One is, first of all, that maybe there's no need for irrigation because there's abundant precipitation, so the soil moisture is sufficient, and then farmers simply do not need the irrigation. That is certainly one possibility. The second possibility is that the land in the vicinity of the pump is fully irrigated, so there's no need for more water. Fully irrigated, not just fully irrigated, but fully irrigated with the most intensive use of water per hectare means with crops which can generate the most economic returns with water, and usually may also have the highest returns. At least in this case, like fish farming would be an example. So those are two possible hypotheses for why the pump is not being utilized. If this is true, then let's just check what the data tells us about that before we discuss what can be done to improve that. So first of all, what you see in this graph is the question of how much land is utilized. And this is all from the data. So this is divided by seasons. On the leftmost, and this is divided, the data from Saptari is on the right, and from the other three districts in the study, it's on the left. And in each graph, the leftmost bar tells us how much average land, on average, how much land the farmer actually owns. And then we see the darker bars for each season indicate how much land is cultivated by the solar pump. And the lighter shades indicate how much land is cultivated in general by the solar pump and other sources in total. Okay, so you see that the lighter shade bars are not quite um, as high as the leftmost bar, which is the total land, but they're close. So most of the land is irrigated or cultivated, but the share of the land which is cultivated or irrigated through the solar pump is quite low. Those bars are much lower. And so it's not like the land is fully cultivated through the solar pump. There is, first of all, land which is irrigated by other means, including diesel pumps. And there is land which is not cultivated at all, both of which suggest that the reason the pump is not fully utilized is not because there's no more land to irrigate. Either there is land which is not cultivated, there is land which is cultivated through diesel powered pumps. We would like to see ideally the solar pump cultivate those areas as well. That is not happening, and we need to understand why in order to solve this problem. Um, so it's actually hard to imagine that land is fully irrigated, and certainly that all land in the vicinity of the pump is not irrigated. Even if farmers are cultivating all of their land, we would like to see them at least selling to other neighbors, neighboring farmers, to utilize the pump. And we are seeing very little amount of water selling in our data. About less than 10% of the farmers do any water selling, and they sell a very small amount of water. So this is still a mystery. The data doesn't tell us exactly what is happening, but we are seeing indications that farmers are not fully utilizing their pumps. If the problem is soil moisture is sufficient from precipitation, maybe storage of water would be one solution. But that's expensive. Storing water, pumping it even when there's no need for the water in order to use it when soil moisture is insufficient. So I don't know. That's a question because storage is expensive. Um, and if when it comes to not cultivating enough, we have to understand first of all why some land is not cultivated, why there's not more trade in water, more selling, and why there is not a greater shift to more water intensive crops in order to maximize profits. If aquaculture is the most profitable, why are farmers still growing pulses on some of their land? What are the barriers? What are the market frictions here? It could be food security, persistence of habits, risk aversion, whatever it is. Those are things we need to understand in order to make SIPs more profitable, in order to make them more economically viable. Because without that, I think the prospects for market-based diffusion are going to be much reduced. I just want to mention in this regard, obviously we need to do more research on this. We have to observe more farmers, perhaps out of the Nepali farmers who have many more of them have adopted solar pumps. Maybe we should collect more data on this to understand better what is going on. Maybe we should experiment with interventions to try and remove some of these frictions which prevent farmers from utilizing the pump most profitably. And I think another approach, which maybe is very important here, is really connecting some of these pumps to the grid in order so even when they're not irrigating, that they don't lie idle but produce electricity. That could be a promising way of generating more profitability for the pumps. And we need this profitability in order to finance the high upfront cost of these pumps. So this is where we are on this. We don't have conclusive answers, but I think these are important questions for us to answer as researchers. I'll end with that. Thank you very much. Should I take any questions now or from the chat?
Yes, there are a few questions. Thank you, Dr. Fishman. And there are a few questions. Maybe what you can do is take a look at a question in a question answer box and respond on that, giving the time is running.
Sure. So I'm looking at the
Yeah,
question.
yes. So thank you so much, Professor Fishman. And now may I request Professor Vishnu Pandey to present his work on institutional modality of grid-connected SIP, a global review.
Okay, thank you so much, Manohara, and good morning from Kathmandu to everyone. In the next 12 minutes or so, I'll be talking about some insights from our recent review on various institutional modalities for grid-connected SIPs in different parts of the world. And I acknowledge inputs from my colleagues Vijaya, Aditya, and Manohara for preparing these presentations. In today's discussion, we'll be talking through the three key questions in the panels and to get some insights on what could be the appropriate institutional modalities for Tarai Nepal. So to provide some context for this one, especially for question 3 in this slide, I will be sharing some of the insights with a specific focus on what are the scenarios for SIPs, solar irrigation pumps in Nepal, what is the significance of grid connections, what are some experience in our neighboring countries and in different parts, what are different typologies for grid connections that we can find from the literatures, and what are the different attributes of institutional modalities that we need to consider while deciding the institutional model for the governance of grid connected solar system. And there are a lot of attention for solar irrigation pumps in recent years, and this is gradually increasing. More than 1,800 solar irrigation pumps are already installed in Nepal, and nearly 1,400 of them are supported through the subsidy of Alternative Energy Promotion Center. And the distribution of those pumps are naturally in the Tarai plains of Nepal in province 1, 2, and 5. 75% of the applications to AEPC and 85% of the grants provided in the form of subsidies are in the Tarai districts. That is primarily because they are the major consumer and there's a major grain basket of the countries, and we do a lot of irrigation there using groundwater, and those solar pumps are used for groundwater irrigation. Furthermore, some findings from AEPC pumps indicate that about 22% of SIP subsidy are granted to women applicants. So they are trying to be as inclusive as possible. And a large number of pumps are between 1 to 2 horsepower size. It indicates that most of the pumps we have in in Nepal, especially in Tarai, are the smaller size. And we further analyze the cost scenario. Thank you, Kasi Kafleji, for his digging out the information and preparing such a nice table. We can see that cost of SIP is really high. Yeah, we have tried to show the distribution of cost across the provinces. P1, P2, Bagmati, and so on are the provinces, and the pump capacity in horsepower in the rows. We can see that, for example, in province 1, the cost for SIP is about 3.9 lakhs Nepali rupees for less than 1 horsepower and to 6.7 lakhs for 2 horsepower pumps and so on. It indicates that even with 60% subsidy that the government is providing now for the SIPs, farmers still had to pay a good amount of money for acquiring a SIP, which based on the information we have is 2,180 USD per SIP. Of course, it varies with the size. This is a very gross value, may not have significant meaning, but the key conclusion is the cost is high. And the challenge here is how do we enhance the return of the subsidy or maximize the return? And one of the strategy for maximizing the return could be maximizing the use of energy, that is solar energy. Like we saw from the Dr. Fishman's presentation as well, that it's not utilized to a great extent. If we can maximize the use, there's a likelihood that we can improve the income and then optimize the return on the subsidy or in the overall investment. Therefore, like we see SIPs in Nepal, in Tarai are used for groundwater irrigation purpose. This kind of water energy connection has implications in groundwater over extraction and associated impact on the environment. Therefore, we need to incentivize in some ways that the energy is evacuated. Solar energy are of course used for pumping as well, and the excess are evacuated to the grid system so that farmers can get extra income, and it can help to mitigate the risk of groundwater over extraction, also stabilize the grid system and provide quality power to the nearby area, and also help improve the income of the farmers. So within this context, it clearly indicates that there is a great significance of grid connection of the solar irrigation pumps. If we try to see the experience of the neighboring countries, those kind of practices are already there. For example, in Bangladesh, SIP operators will be like a small IPP. IPP means independent power producer who produce power and connect to the grids. So the system they have is, for example, this is a standalone SIP which has a water pump and also the solar panels, and they are connected later to the grids using a solar inverter and the smart metering systems. They means those IPP submit bill to the distribution authority every month. It's a bulk revenue system. Utility meter will be bi-directional, that they can record the energy export as well as self-consumption. And net metering guideline 2018 has clearly laid out the policies and procedure for grid connection in detail. It means this practice is already there in Bangladesh. And similarly in India also we have already practice for grid connection. If we try to see some of the examples, like in Karnataka pilot, they call as Surya Raita scheme. They solarize the existing pumps with unidirectional metering. Farmers cooperative are facilitating the project, and feed-in tariff is quite high, Indian rupees 7.2, and they are also distributed for paying back the loans, farmers benefit, and cooperatives return. Similarly, in Gujarat, there is another pilot they call as Surya Shakti Kisan Yojana. They have bi-directional metering system, and they have also feed-in tariff, almost half of what they use in Karnataka. There is another scheme called as Prime Minister Kusumi scheme. They have three components, and one and A and C components are related to grid connection. For example, component A is related to 10,000 megawatt of grid connected solar of the size 500 kilowatt to 2 megawatt capacity. They are set up, some are by farmers, they can be set up by cooperative, project developers, and so on. There's a wide flexibility, and power to be purchased by DISCOM at a fixed tariff rate, and they have PPA for 25 years. And similarly, component C also is about solarization of about 1.5 million grid connected agriculture pumps. That's quite large in number. So what it indicates that this grid connection is not something new. It's actually already in practice, and our neighboring countries are already practicing to a great extent. There is also a case of Nepal as well. In Chitwan, on-grid solar PV system for water pumping was installed or piloted by Nepal Electricity Authority. I think Sagarji is here in this discussion. He was the lead person for developing it. It was purely for the testing technical feasibility of connecting solar irrigation pump to the grid, because since the pump size is very small, they were curious to know whether we can really do it efficiently or not. They connected two pumps at two locations to the grids. Both are in Chitwan. One is electric pump replaced with the solar and connected to the grid, and second one is diesel pumps was removed and solar pump was installed and connected with the grids. Tariff was defined as per net metering policy that is available in Nepal, and the farmers got benefit that they say that they don't need to pay electricity bill to the NEA. I mean, at least that amount is the direct benefit to the farmers. However, there is no clear institutional modalities were worked out because it was piloted purely for testing the technical feasibility. These experiences, as well as the literatures from other parts of the world, indicate that there are three typologies of grid-connected solar system. One typology is based on a scale of solar PV system. They are based on a scale. One is single one or standalone. Second is micro or mini grid system, in which several pumps are connected together, but as a standalone grid system, not a standalone single pump as a local grid, but they are not connected to the grid. And third category is grid connected. It means either individual pumps or the mini or microgrid system with the several pumps connected to it are connected to the grid. So this can be considered as a sequence for grid connection as well. Similarly, based on method of connection to grid, there are direct connection to grid. For example, one individual pump is connected directly to the grid, or connection through the mini or microgrid system, where like the several pumps are connected using the local feeder lines and make a small grid, and that grid is connected at one point to the grid connection system. And based on ownership, there are three models: privately owned, community owned, and government owned. Then the interesting here is, even for the grid connection, there are different technical options available. For example, One is direct net metering of solar pump system, where a water pump can get electricity input from both solar grid inverter and power grid network. This is one of the options we have in practice. Second is solar microgrid system, in which, like I mentioned earlier, several pumps are connected to a microgrid system using a local feeder. Then solar panels are also connected to the microgrid system. Then the microgrid is connected to the national grid at one location using a net meter, so that it helps to account for energy input and output. Third category is solar powered agricultural feeder to create a tail-end grid connected solar PV plants. About 1 to 2 megawatt, it's dedicated for agricultural loads. So this is another, practice or options for grid connection. And finally, fourth one category is on-grid solar pump inverter, which is basically an advanced system. So there are 4 types of the options for grid connection. Now, from this we can see that there are various ways for connection to the grid, but the interesting question for us to understand is, after grid connection, how that will function, how we will govern the grid connected solar system, what could be the institutional modalities for that. For that, we try to review the literatures and get some of the key questions, get inside that. We need to answer some of the key questions to define or decide the institutional model. One is related to ownership. Literature review suggests that about majority or 38% of the ownership is private, followed by community and government. The question is, which one could be more suitable for Nepal-Tarai context? Second question to answer is about beneficiaries. For example, what type of household are we targeting to connect to the system? For example, individual households or private sectors or public sectors or smallholder farmer or largeholder farmer. Again, what are the characteristics of our beneficiaries? Landholding, caste, ethnicity, and income. By that, the question that we need to answer is how to ensure different sections of societies are benefited equitable way using this solar grid connected solar system. Our question is, how do we estimate the benefits? What are the mechanisms for sharing the benefits? How do we share the losses in the grid system? How do we account for total energy and energy use and so on? These are again the several questions that we need to brainstorm and try to find an answer to define a suitable institutional model for any area. Another aspect is about the linkage with the government. That is, what is the role of government and other stakeholders? What kind of regulatory approach works better given the different socioeconomic context? And finally, what could be the business model for investment and return? For example, how do we arrange the capital investment? What is the different proportion of equity, land, loan, and grant, or maybe some other forms? How do we generate the revenue? What is the basis for charging, like flat rate or progressive rate, or there are any other form of charging system? So these are some of the questions that we may need to answer for defining suitable institutional model for any specific area. Then we can get several attributes that are related to the institutional modality. For example, benefit energy sharing mechanism, regulatory approach, ownership, business model, capital investment, beneficiaries. This could be some of the attributes which we need to define as a component of any institutional model that we decide for a particular socioeconomic context. If you go in a bit detail, ownership could be whether privately owned or community owned or government owned is suitable, given again the socioeconomic context of a study area. Similarly, what are the different form of capital investments, like subsidy from government and equity from individuals, or the component of loan also, or maybe entirely privately invested? What could be the different suitable models of capital investment? Similarly, for business model, whether a grant model or grant come loan model or pay as you go model or vulnerable supported model, where vulnerable groups are also assured for some sort of benefits. So which one could be appropriate for our area, or which one are we targeting? Another key question is, what about the type of beneficiaries? I also mentioned earlier, individual household or different size or type of farmers or private consumers or public sector, whatever it is. Which type, category, or a combination of the beneficiaries are we trying to link in our system? And what are the benefit or energy sharing mechanism, like based on extent of use, for example, per hectare size of farm or whatever it is? How do we ensure benefit to the marginal users? How do we incentivize women, for example, in the form of extra subsidy like EC mode pumps did, or differentiated by type of user? We maybe give different benefit to different types of user. And finally, what could be the regulatory approach? The literature has three types of approach: fully regulated by government, jointly regulated by government and community, and ambiguous. Of course, we don't want ambiguous type of regulatory mechanism. Either we want the number one or number two, or any other appropriate types. So there are various attributes of institutional model. And the key question is, what attribute is appropriate for the Nepal Tarai, where we are, this project is planning to install the microgrid system. So I sincerely believe that the discussion later in the panel and during today's event will try to dig out in much deeper and try to confirm the different attributes suitable for the appropriate institutional models. And we have a very concrete take-home message out of this discussion. Thank you. These are the questions that we will be discussing later in the panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Vishnu Pandey. Now let us hear from our distinguished panelists about their thought and also comment on the key question. In this question, like are grid-connected SIP is good solution to increase capacity utilization of SIP in the context of Nepal? How feasible the idea is, given the SIP size in Nepal is very much smaller compared to India and Bangladesh? And then third point of discussion is what kind of appropriate institutional modality for governing the grid-connected solar would be. So in a few minutes of time, I'd like to request first to the Sir Madhusudhan Adhikari sir to comment from the AEPC perspective. May I request sir for your valuable contribution to this discussion? Madhusudhan sir disconnected, or I could not see him. So yeah, Madhusudhan sir maybe might be disconnected internet-wise. Is there Madam Ranju Madam also is here? Ranju Pandey Madam. Hello, Pandey Madam. Hi, yes. You can also start while we wait Madhusudhan sir.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you, Manohara for giving me the opportunity to talk, and both the presentation was very much informative and nice. First of all, I would like to say that as it is mentioned in the first presentation, 40% of the total energy is only utilized, and we cannot find the reason why the remaining is not utilized by the farmer. First of all, we should find out what is the reason behind not utilizing this energy by the farmer, because they're not willingness to this technology, or even they have the market, or they are not facilitated by it, or they don't have any way to utilize it. But first of all, we should find out that. And as far as if they have not seen the market, or they want to sell the remaining energy, then the grid is there. Yes, grid is there. You can sell the energy to the grid, because because the government of Nepal has the policy to buy energy from the alternative source, as we have the government has published the white paper in 2075 about the energy mix. In the energy mix, we are going to have this 5 to 10% of alternative energy, and this alternative energy it is categorized as solar, pump, wind, and biogas, and all the alternative source of energy. So the ANI is buying the energy from the solar, and we have planned to buy from 10 to 1,000 megawatt to 15,000 megawatt of energy from the alternative source. So the grid is there to buy the energy, extra energy from this water pump, and we have the two way to do that. One is you can have the net metering if you want to do individually, one by one farmer, if they want to sell the extra energy during the daytime, then they can sell it by net metering system. We have the tariff for that. Similarly, if they want to make the one, as mentioned in the second presentation, they want to make the one mini grid and then connect to the grid system, then we have the you can do the power purchase agreement. For that you can do for 25 years, and we have also the feeding tariff for that. It is around 7.3 rupees per unit. As Anjalji are also doing the solar power purchase agreement. He also know more about the tariff and whole system, how the process is to go on. And main thing is that we guarantee to buy energy for 25 years in that certain price. So with their 7.3 rupees per unit. So I think that it will definitely create the economic benefit to the farmer. But the main thing is that we have to look for the willingness of the farmer, because what is the reason behind them not utilizing the 40% of their only utilizing the 40% of their energy, not whole and not optimizing the energy from the water irrigation pump. So I believe that if they want to sell, if they want to have the economic benefit, then NE is always there to buy energy from there, and the policy is also guiding the same thing. So that we can buy it. And I believe that NE has created the market for to buy the energy. And once one of my colleagues said that in Nepal, you have to go to the competitive market for everything. Even you grow the vegetable, you have to go to market. But for the energy, government has has a policy to buy it, and for the long term PPA, with the long term 25 years, 30 years, government is willing to buy. So I think it has created a huge market for all of us and opportunity to get benefit from that. So, and one thing also I want to say that NE is willing to do that, because we believe that the big power plant which are of the high megawatt, 1,000 megawatt or more, the foreign people get benefit, because it has to be invested in dollar, and for the medium size, the businessman get benefit. But the small community based small power plants less than 1 megawatt, the direct farmer and the rural people and the marginal people get benefit from that. So NE is always willing to do this work for the community, so that they can, the whole community get benefit from that. And there is an example also, we have also done on the PPA of the small micro hydro 23 megawatt or 23 kilowatt, sorry, 23 kilowatt, 80 kilowatt. And similarly, the mini hydro, mini grid, that is in Typologies, they have also applied for the PPA with NEA, and very soon they will also get connected to national grid. So I want to ensure you all that government and NEA is always willing to buy energy, and so that the farmer and the marginal people get benefit from that. So for that all, what you have to do is we have to know the willingness of the local people, and good governance there and everything there, so that they can apply, and the benefit is directly going to be to the lower marginal people, not the people just between them. That's the thing I want to say, and I want to ensure you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, madam. Ranju Pandey. Now, Madhusudhan sir is connected. Sir, we'd like to hear your perspective or comment on this two issues. One is the SIP are not fully utilized. Why do you think that this is not happening? Only 40% energy is utilized. What the reason are? Second is that in this connection, the microgrid connection is a very good solution to increase the capacity of this full utilization of SIP. Yeah, since in Nepal there are smaller size of pump, what do you see the feasibility, this idea of microgrid connection? So what could be a appropriate institutional modality that do you think important to do pilot that we are thinking? Thank you, sir. Please, some of your reflection we'd like to hear. Madhu sir, you are on mute. Yes. Mute गर्नुहुन्छ कि? I'm on mute. Sir. Yes.
Namaste,
yes.
namaste.
Yes,
Hello,
namaste.
everyone.
Hi.
Good morning.
Yes.
Sorry, there was a little transportation hiccup, so I hear first presentation, then I only could hear Dr. Vishnu's presentation partly. Welcome to all, and we are all happy that now we are with the vaccine, so we could move and join each other in future. Maybe these webinars are rather becoming boring. You know, you cannot just feel that closeness with kind of physical meeting.
Yes.
Connecting to this, Manohara ji was here. We had a discussion, and then I heard these things and issues. Resha ji is also there. Resha is the pioneer in water pumping. He used to be having hands-on skills in Windrock, doing these kind of things. And particularly AEPC is also from last 3 years. We do things, we do the things our policies, regulations provide. So many times in government program, we have some missing links because government is very much interested in supporting in financing, but the other sides like social mobilizations, capacity buildings, all these things sometimes are not properly embraced in the program. But 3 years we have been doing continuously this small farmers irrigation programs. I think we have supported around 1,500 pumps, and this year also we have 500 pumps, and the demand is very, very high. Actually, this is enormous demand. So rationalizing the demand to bring to that small numbers, it's creating a lot of trouble to us because everyone wants this pump. These pumps, we had a very preliminary evaluation from IWMI also, and we also sent monitors from here. There was a small group from ministry also who has done some field survey. So seems like it's a good initiative. It's largely very beneficial to farmer. But when it comes to the sustainability and financial sustainability and technical sustainability issue, the main concern is how to make this technology work for a few years with the farmer level knowledge. That's one thing. How to provide the support service, how they can get the maintenance services, replacement services, to make it technically sustainable. I am much more worried about technical sustainability because we have already given them the pump. It must work. That is the priority number one, because if it doesn't work, then the purpose is not met. Then other parameters also definitely will not work. So first, technical sustainability is a challenge. I personally feel that the technology we providing may not be optimal because there are a lot of varieties of pumps available and the controller available, which might have a technical issue in terms of technical sustainability, in which demands replacement of spare parts and the life of technology itself, like controller and the pump. Panels are pretty much robust in this link because they at least go for a few years without trouble, but pump and the controller is an issue. That how to make better technical specification and then use it is one issue. Then of course, once the pump start running, then we have these two issues which are under discussion in our seminar. Is one, how to use the capacity, how to utilize the full capacity of the pump, and how to do the institutional arrangement to do it in a full capacity. These are two questions we are basically discussing. So in terms of support we are providing now, we are really going from very small farmer to the medium-sized farmer, not very big farmer, because the size of subsidy is not covering to big irrigation projects. So small irrigation projects are our target group for now. Once we talk about the single farmer level issue, then definitely he will not use the pump for every day. He must have the certain pattern of cropping, and then when he needs water, he waters it. So the capacity of the pump for the paddy irrigation, wheat irrigation, and then the vegetable farming is, I think, three crops they do normally. So in a farmer level, definitely there will be a capacity surplus. So utilization factor will be not optimal, definitely, because he either will have this small pump which cannot cover his watering of the crops like paddy or wheat, because the pump's capacity itself is limited, or he might have some surplus capacity if he has chosen to be a little medium-sized pump. So individual farmer level thing is an issue in terms of utilization factor. So there could be, as it suggested, there could be water sharing mechanism that one farmer now recently I see our people working, engineer working, we had around 13,000 application plus more, and then we had to select only 500. So there are a lot of people looking for the pump in the same area, but we don't have very big rationality to select it, but few will get there. We have this time followed a process that the village development committee recommends from serial number, and we are picking from the top 5 as a top one is a priority, because this is a very complicated way to select 500 out of 13,000. So I am not fully convinced, but still we are doing it, but there is no rationality coming. So we just doing it in a way that we can have some logics and some intuition or some subjectivity is also included. So there will be nearby farmers who have not got this opportunity and one has got it. So if we can make an arrangement to share it, that the other one also get water at least, and this is not built in our system. So maybe we need to make a mechanism that how can we make it work, that the pump holder can uh, charge some fee or whatever, and then the others also get the water, because once it is said that it is a personal pump, he might raise a concern of wear and tear, maintenance, this and that. Villagers are normally not very cooperate to each other once they are neighbors, so they always have some issues. So there will be a friction to very easygoing share. I don't believe many will do it. So if we can make some arrangement that giving the subsidy in one particular farmer in that area, how can we make it like they have to give water to others also, and there has to be a mechanism of compensating somehow, so that they go in coexistence rather than in hostile approach. So that could be those applicant, maybe we can group them and make a cluster that, sorry, we cannot give you all, but one is there. So how can we fit into to the share mode so that it can be at least have some benefit of having a pump in vicinity. So that's one issue that I think individual farmer to share water model could be a model to discuss. And then maybe we can have on big pump bigger than what we are promoting now. So it's a kind of a small farmer community farmer group pump, so that a pump site will be booked, and then there will be a small arrangement that they can share water among them with some arrangement. So having a bigger pump as a group pump, as a farmer group pump or cooperative pump, so that they can have a joint ownership of the pump and then also can share the benefit of the pumping. Then third will be how to connect the pump and the panel, as we are discussing now. Could it be a microgrid that can help to have a centralized power system, and then we have a distributed pipeline or distributed pumps. If we could have a simple AC pumps, so which could be distributed in the different location, and then uh, operated as per the requirement of that group of farmers, or we could have a pipeline system or water distribution system. So these things I think are under discussion, as a quite Israeli example, and Vishnuji also said, Ranjuji also mentioned there are possibilities. Then we had also discussing that even having these big microgrid connected or big pump, they might not be fully utilized, whatever in the sunshine we have received in that area. So could be an option to have power exchange with the grid. That is also the agenda for today: microgrid or mini grid connected pump or grid connected system with the pumping facilities. Ranjuj is very much here. In the last leg of discussion, that connection to the grid comes, then it's basically the comfort to the grid to connect that pump where the grid is, how much cost it's incurred to connect to the grid, what its impact to the grid, which is these issues are basically more related to utility, local utility, and NEA. So we need to discuss if we go in a scale, if some programs are there to support us, or the government take this initiative to have a distributed grid connected solar pumps, then it's good idea to have them connected in the grid, so that the exchange of power will be optimized to minimize the loss of power or opportunity to generate more power. So basically these issues we are struggling, we doing it. There is another program called I think new and integrated energy program in the Department of Irrigation. There are pumps in the Department of Drinking Water. We are basically supporting now in a very small scale to the farmer level, since they basically our subsidy scheme is not very attractive to very new pump holder, but if they are running the pumps with the diesel generators, then they have their own system already built, their borehole is there, their distribution system is there, then they can add the pump, and then we are counting their other investment as their part of investment, and we are counting the power system plus other adjustment, our part of the system. People like GAM Power, people like these Sun Farmer, and other stakeholder who has worked with us will be in better position how this is actually done at the site, at the field level. We are not very strict personally, because this is a very innovative and farmer support scheme. So we don't want to disappoint farmers saying this and that, rather than let them have some pumps and have this technology tested, because this might comes in the preview of farmers level investment also. So maybe some thousand pump will give us some confidence, and to the farmer also some confidence that this technology works. So I'm not very strict that as long as the pump is installed and operating and farmer is happy, the local government is happy, we are just not very running after the all kind of details, but it must work. So in that review, I think our initiatives are continuous in this area. Definitely in the first round of meeting with Aditi ji and Vishnu ji, I also reiterated that we would be very happy to get a proper feedback, very honest feedback in these areas, because we also don't know the technical sustainability and the financial sustainability and institutional model or impact of the whole thing, because unless you do these in field, you cannot evaluate them. So we have done a certain number. So I think we are in the phase that we could have a very proper evaluation of this thing, and you can give us the feedback that whether we are doing the good thing or how it can be improved. As I said, this is a very tricky issue. Farmers are in the topmost priority of developing government, especially India, Nepal, like Bangladesh kind of country where we are living on subsistence farming. So we don't want to disappoint the farmer once they are with us. So let's work with them. But the demand is very huge. Even maybe this is because of the subsidy level. Maybe we need to correct it. I don't know. You also need to get the feedback whether the subsidy level is encouraging people to rush to get a pump, or they are in real in need, or their capacity is fully utilized. So I think the capacity utilization is an issue of this webinar also. So let's get the feedback. We had a couple of discussion. I think they're learning from Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, also Pakistan, I say. So this learning will be definitely beneficial to us. But I think the main agenda is how to make it sustainable. We are giving a farmer minimum of 300,000 rupees for a small pump, which is quite a bit of money. If this is not at least creating some multiplier of this investment. If we are giving them 300,000, then it must be there should be 3 to 4 million rupees benefit to the farmer as such, because this is the cost to cost investment is worthless, because we want a multiplier effect. So the pump must run for a few years. As a technician, I still have a doubt in my mind, because the kind of lowest level of possible management, operation management, and the kind of technology are in introductory phase. The DC pump, Anjal ji will be in better position to explain it more in detail. DC pumps are really tricky things. They are very specific to the material, metallurgy, their design, water quality, all kind of thing, maintenance. So I have a big doubt that the investor might not be as effective as the government is thinking, but it is very popular. So we want to continue it. So the feedback from EMI and other stakeholders who has specific knowledge in this area, we could revise and redesign our program, and definitely we have to convince government to get more budget. But before that, we need to demonstrate that it works and it has a greater impact. So let's work together, and we are always with you guys to share and to collaborate. This is what I want to say at this stage. So it is nice, and thanks to EMI and the group to organize this. Let's collaborate and move ahead. Thank you. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your in this contribution. Yeah, rightly pointed out that there is a possibility of microgrid connection to solar, but this has to benefit the people, and also there is a need for doing an experiment. How does it work? Very much, and also we are on the process of impact evaluation. We'll definitely give some idea. Now, I would like to go to the Resha Piya, ma'am. So can you share your thought and reflection on this, whether microgrid connection to SIP is feasible in the context of Nepal? If so, what could be the institutional modalities based on your risk, knowledge, and experience in this field? We'd like to hear from you.
Manohara ma'am and the IWMI team for giving me the opportunity to share my
insights and thoughts regarding this solar irrigation pump. And also like the presentation was very informative and thank you for that. Regarding the first question, like are grid connected SIP good solution to increase the capacity utilization of solar water pumping? I think definitely yes. I think no one will doubt about that. It's a good solution to increase the capacity of utilization factor. And in addition to that, if these are connected to the grids, then the farmer can also earn money from selling the extra electricity that otherwise would have been wasted. Yeah. And also like
sorry, Resha, sorry to interrupt. Your voice is a bit soft. Can you speak up or be near the mic, please? Many people are saying they can't hear.
Yeah,
I can hear, but it's a bit low.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can hear you. Good.
Thank you. Yes, as I said that the grid connected this solar irrigation pump is a good solution because it can increase the utilization factor, as you can see in the business presentation that it has been already practiced in our neighboring country. And it is also good for the farmer because a farmer can earn like a revenue by selling the electricity, which otherwise would have been wasted, no? And also Ranjuji rightly pointed out that there is a the government policy there where it allows the connection of solar PV system to the grid is there. However, I think there are lots of challenges regarding this grid connected solar water pumping system because the solar water pumping system that has been like promoted in Nepal till now, it's small in one hand, and in another hand there is the government criteria mentioning that those solar pumps which are installed in the areas or the farms which are not connected to the grid electricity are only eligible for the subsidy. Yeah, and therefore like if there is no grid access in those areas, then the grid connection, I think that possibility is like minimized. Yeah, that's one reason I think. And in the area where solar water pumping is promoted in the area where there is a grid connection, then for the grid connection area, although also the solar water pumping from the farm must have a grid connection, and in the on-grid farms where the electricity is reliable, like I think that the farmer will prefer electrical pump rather than the solar electricity pump because grid tariff is very low for the irrigation. And currently, I think it's about 4.3 rupees only. Yeah, and therefore for farmer, I think it does not make economical sense to go for the solar irrigation pump where like grid electricity is reliable. And in the area where the grid electricity is not reliable, in those areas, there might be a uninterrupted, frequent interruption in the power supply, or there might be a voltage fluctuation, which also creates the problem to the electrical pump. In those areas, even the connection to the grid from the solar PV system of solar water pumping, I think it will be a problem because for the grid connection, there should be a regular power supply in the grid. Yeah, and also for me, what I see is like it does not make economic sense to any particularly to use that electricity because they are selling the electricity at cheaper rate for the irrigation, and they need to buy at the higher rate, like as Ranju ji said that 7.3 rupees they need to buy from the grid. Therefore, it also does not make economical sense to the NEA too. Therefore, whether NEA will be willing to purchase that higher price electricity or not, that's also the question I think we need to answer. Yeah, and particularly the small solar pump, I think that grid connection cost, particularly related to this net metering, inverter cost, human resource cost, to the total system cost will be comparatively expensive. Yeah, and also the revenue of sales of electricity, because electricity itself kilowatt hour will be very small. Therefore, I don't think that the farmer will get much benefit out of it. However, like for the larger PV systems or the solar water pumping systems, this is feasible, which we have already seen from the example of India, Bangladesh, and also there are also examples in the Pakistan. Yeah, and you had a question about this appropriate institutional modality. I think, in my view, like all the three models that you presented, like whether it's a private, it's a community, or the government one, or the public-private partnership model, all this can be appropriate depending upon the areas where you are working, depending on the community where you are working. No, all these things can be like an appropriate model, because there are lots of models which like has been successful in the different areas. But one thing that we need to do is like we need to identify the barriers, like what are the main barriers of like this solar irrigation pump to connect to the grid, yeah, and develop the policies and the regulations to address this barrier. I think that's a very important thing. And also, like as Madhusudhan sir said, that there are more than 13,000 demand, yeah, sorry, please correct me, 13,000 demand yearly, but AEPC is able to serve only 500 demand yearly. I think because of this higher subsidy or irregular subsidy is also limiting the scale-up market of this SIP. And if this continues, then it really hinders the market development. Yeah, therefore we need to develop a mechanism where like it's a simple mechanism where like the farmers or the project developers can like easily have access to all these things, and they can easily connect this system to the grid. Because if you follow the process, that current process, I think it's a really barrier to the even to the farmers and the private sectors. And for me, what I think is that the farmer is not a technical person. If you ask farmer to do everything like manage the solar water pumping and do irrigation and do agriculture at the same time, I think it's not the role of the farmer. I think farmer role is to do the farming and sell their produce. No, that's the role of the farmer. Therefore, instead of saying farmer to do all these technical things, I think we need to introduce this energy service model or the water entrepreneurship model, where the energy service provider or the water entrepreneur, they will actually like manage the solar water pumping system and the sells water to the farmer who are in need. Because for me, what I understand with this experience is farmer require water. Where that water comes, they don't much care about whether it's from solar water pumping, whether it's from the like other source, diesel generator or other. They need a cheaper water for irrigation. That's what the farmer knows about. Therefore, I think our overall effort should be like we need to create an enabling environment to develop and support this water entrepreneurship model, service delivery model, and help market work. And if we help market to work, then I think whether it's grid tied or whether it's not grid tied, the water entrepreneur or the service provider, he or she will work to maximize the utilization of the solar water pumping, either by selling water or either by selling electricity or both. No, therefore, in my opinion, let us all help to work this market to work. That's what I want to say. Finally, yeah. Thank you. Over to you, Manohara.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ma'am Resha Piya. So definitely very valuable point, considering the market is very much important. Supply chains has to be there, no? So the farmer, and also we need to have a better understanding of the barrier, how this process work. So having said that, now we like to hear from our madam, from our local government perspective. Madam Kiran madam, हजुर त्यहाँ सुन्दै हुनुहुन्छ मलाई? Hello madam, I'll speak in Nepali and I'll translate you, maybe summarize you.
हजुर सुन्दैछु म्याडम सुन्दैछु
हजुरले सुन्नुभयो नि हैन त?
हजुर सुनिरहेछु
हजुर तपाईको विचारमा अब यहाँ चाहिँ स्थानीय तहको नीति निर्माता पनि हुनुभयो हैन? स्थानीय तहको भूमिका हेर्दाखेरि यो सौर्य ऊर्जालाई 100% प्रयोग गर्न नसक्नुको कारण के होला हैन? एउटा चाहिँ यहाँको विचारमा। अर्को कुरो चाहिँ अब यो अहिले छलफल भयो नि त सोलर सिँचाइ पम्पलाई माइक्रोग्रिडमा कनेक्सन गर्ने सम्भावना छ कि छैन भनेको आजको डिस्कसन जुन छ त्यसमा चाहिँ स्थानीय तहले कस्तो खालको चाहिँ भूमिका खेल्न सक्छ होला, यसलाई चाहिँ यो एक किसिमको कार्यमूलक अनुसन्धान जस्तै हेर्न खोज्दैछौँ कसरी यो सानो सानो पम्पहरूलाई ग्रिडमा कनेक्सन गर्दाखेरि कस्तो फाइदा दिँदो रहेछ भन्ने कुराको यसका संस्थागत पक्षमा हामी छलफल गर्दैछौँ। अनि स्थानीय तहको दृष्टिकोणबाट यहाँका केही कुराहरू राखिदिनुहुन्छ कि त?
हजुर, म भन्न चाहन्छु सर्वप्रथम त यहाँ उपस्थित हाम्रो सम्पूर्ण आदरणीय महानुभावमा नमस्कार गर्न चाहन्छु। र वास्तवमा यो सौर्य ऊर्जा सम्बन्धी म के भन्न चाहन्छु भने यो हाम्रो नेपालमा वैकल्पिक ऊर्जाको रूपमा सौर ऊर्जा एकदम सबभन्दा लाभदायक र प्रभावकारी छ। र यो खास गरेर कृषि क्षेत्रमा सिँचाइ गर्न र विभिन्न जुन मसिनहरू हुन्छ, मसिन जुन विभिन्न मसिनले विभिन्न काम गरिन्छ, त्यो मसिनहरू चलाउन अति नै चाहिँ लाभदायक र प्रभावकारी छ र सँगसँगै सस्तो पनि छ। किनभने यो सौर ऊर्जा जति सस्तो छ, विद्युत एकदमै महँगो छ। त्यसले गर्दा यो सौर ऊर्जा चाहिँ हाम्रो किसानको लागि अति नै आवश्यक देखिन्छ। र यो सौर ऊर्जा एकचोटिको लागतमा वर्षौं वर्ष उपयोग गर्न सकिन्छ। किनभने यो अब यहाँ घाम पनि पर्याप्त हुन्छ अनि यो घामले गर्दा एकदम सौर ऊर्जा जुन हाम्रो एकदम पर्याप्त मात्रामा चाहिँ त्यो उपलब्ध हुन्छ। त्यसले गर्दा एकचोटि लगानी गरे भने वर्षौं वर्षसम्म चाहिँ उसको उपयोग गर्न सकिन्छ। र चाहिएको बेला प्रयोग गर्ने र जुन अरू बेला जुन हाम्रो ऊर्जालाई खपत गरी विद्युत प्राधिकरणसँग जुन बचेको ऊर्जालाई हामी चाहिँ सर्वप्रथम त हामीलाई अब किसानलाई जति खपत हुन्छ त्यो गरिन्छ, तर यो प्रयोग गर्ने र अरू बेला पनि त्यो ऊर्जालाई चाहिँ हामी बचत गरी जुन विद्युत प्राधिकरण छ हाम्रो जुन जिल्ला सम्पूर्ण जिल्लामा यो विद्युत प्राधिकरणसँग यो एउटा जुन हाम्रो एपीसी छ जुन वैकल्पिक ऊर्जा केन्द्र त्योसँग समन्वय गरी यसलाई चाहिँ पावर ग्रेडमा जोडिने चाहिँ हाम्रो सकिन्छ। र चाहिएको बेला यसलाई ठाउँमा विभिन्न ठाउँमा चाहिन्छ त्यहाँ खपत गर्न सकिन्छ।
त्यसमा अनि स्थानीय तहले कस्तो भूमिका खेल्न सक्छ होला त म्याडम? यो सम्भव त
एकदम राइट, यही म भन्न चाहन्छु। जुन स्थानीय सरकारलाई यो जुन वैकल्पिक ऊर्जा सम्बन्धी यो नीति बनाउनु अधिकार पनि दिएको छ। र यसलाई चाहिँ हाम्रो जसमा स्थानीय सरकार, हाम्रो यो विद्युत प्राधिकरण र यो जुन हाम्रो वैकल्पिक ऊर्जा केन्द्रसँग समन्वय गरी नीति बनाउन सकिन्छ। र यसलाई स्थानीय सरकारको भूमिका, अब हाम्रो भूमिका भनौँ न, यसमा चाहिँ हामी अब स्थानीय सरकारले जग्गा उपलब्ध गराइदिन्छ। किनभने सर्वप्रथम त जग्गा चाहिन्छ त्यो जडान गर्नलाई, यो चाहिँ जग्गा उपलब्ध गराइदिन्छ। त्यसपछि चाहिँ यो वैकल्पिक ऊर्जाको प्रयोग कसरी गरिन्छ यो किसानलाई चाहिँ हामी प्रोत्साहन गर्ने चाहिँ हामी गर्छौँ। किसानलाई थाहा छैन अझ पनि हाम्रो जुन यहाँ यो ठाउँमा किसानले उपभोग गरेको छैन। किसानलाई त अब सस्तो चाहिन्छ र पर्याप्त चाहिन्छ, तर केबाट पर्याप्त र सस्तो हुन्छ भनेर थाहा छैन। त्यसको लागि किसानलाई हामी चाहिँ एउटा प्रोत्साहन गर्ने वातावरण बनाउन हामी सक्छौँ। अर्को पनि गर्न सकिन्छ, जुन हामी आन्तरिक बजेट जुन विनियोजन गर्छौँ त्यसमा पनि हामी चाहिँ यो कृषि ऊर्जाको लागि प्रवर्धन गरेर हामी त्यो निकाल्न सक्छौँ। यस्ता विभिन्न कुराहरू छ।
हजुर, धन्यवाद मैडम, धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद। What very summary, what is Madam Kiran is saying is that there is a definitely possibility of having SIP solar pump connected to microgrid For that, role of local government would be on making sure that people are informed about this information technology, awareness raising. This is one part. Another is that because this could be based on learning from this microgrid connection to SIP, it could be a policy learning, and local government in collaboration with the AEPC and also NEA could develop jointly the policy also, the how to implement such kind of if it work in future based on the learning from this pilot. So policy intervention could be another area, because according to the new constitution, also local government operation act, there is also responsibility and right of local government to deal or manage issue around the alternate energy less than, according, she didn't mention the size, but there is a right of local government less than 3 megawatt alternate energy is the jurisdiction of the local government. So policy thinking she provided. Another is that definitely there is a lot of demand from farmer on the solar irrigation pump. Solar irrigation pump, it is relatively cheaper compared to other energy sources, and farmer also can have access this pump for many years. So there is a definitely benefit, and yeah, she on her views, definitely government, local government is ready to support, coordinate for this kind of initiative. Thank you so much. So if there is anything question, please put in a question answer box. Now may I request, Madam, अहिले पछाडि आउँला अहिले है now I'd like to request Anjal, private sector CEO, GAM Power, to provide his thought and comment on this whole idea of grid connection. Thank you, Anjalji.
Sure. Thanks, Manohara. Thanks, all. I think it's been a great discussion overall. I think I'll just start with my comments on some of the earlier presentations. I think when we talk about utilization, I feel like 40% is already a very good number. Like we have like several appliances that we use in our households ourselves, and using them for 40% of the time is okay. Cars, I think there's this data that shows evidence that cars are only used 8% of the time, and that seems to be okay for a lot of the consumer goods. So I think 40% utilization for solar water pumps is very, very good number. And for a lot of our customers, we know that some of our customers who use them for 20 to 30% of the time, they're already either displacing their old energy costs, they're already saving on what they're paying for diesel, or they're making more money through increased yield, increased utilization of land area, or by like relying on more commercial farming. So if you can either offset your past cost or like generate more revenue, I feel like whatever is the utilization, it should be fine. I think it should it's a case by case basis and depends on the type of farmer he or she is, the kind of agriculture that they're involved in. There's also the case of well, are the pumps being oversized? Can we size them depending upon each farmer? I think like Resha ji rightly mentioned that like the current mechanism in Nepal for subsidy distribution is based on 1 horsepower, 2 horsepower. It's not actually based on the kind of agriculture the person is involved in. So how can you actually, like while doing the survey, understand their exact water requirements? Because of course it's going to be seasonal. I know that we also talked about like smaller pumps. There's a lot of growing trend for like solar water pumps being like much smaller, and there's great advantage to that, right? I think the fact that we're using solar, the fact that it's solar, it gives you an advantage that it's modular, it's demand driven. You can set up 1 kilowatt, 2 kilowatt, whatever size you need anywhere. And introducing large centralized systems, I think kind of takes away the advantage that solar can provide, because large scale projects that I've seen that we have implemented, I think come with large scale problems, managing complications, approvals, land ownership, land clearance. You need like get approvals from several different tiers. like Ranju ma'am was talking about the 8 megawatt project that we're currently building. It's been like 2.5 years. We're still like almost on the verge of finalizing permits, but it did take us like 2.5 years to sort of get through all the paperwork. So I think the advantage of solar is the fact that it can be demand driven, it can be set up wherever you want, and just like increasing the size of the system, like connecting them to the grid could be a distraction. Because frankly, I think the bigger issue here, I feel, is finance and how we are delivering finance. Because as Madhusudhan sir said, I think there's enough demand. There's obviously 13,000 people just vying for 500 systems to be installed each year, and which is not fair. And I feel like the marginal gains that we can derive from potentially connecting these farmers to the grid are not significant enough. Because there's other issues around how can we encourage private sector, like investment into the sector. How can are the public funds being channeled properly? Is the 60% the like upfront capital subsidy the right way to go? Can that be channelized differently to leverage different kind of private capital? I think there's like other issues that demand more attention. At least our approach at the moment has been to gather as much operational data as we can. We built our own hardware software solution that currently we're looking to use to not just look at the performance of the water pumps, but also tie that with yield for smallholder farmers. How can we accurately help them increase their yield? Because at the end of the day, it is what it is, right? I mean, it's not just about the water use, it's about how much more money that you can make. What's the maximum return on investment? I think Vishnu sir had a slide in his presentation where he talked about return on investment. It's also about not just for the private investors or for the subsidy, but it's also for the farmer. So by using the water pump, by every liter of water used, what was the increase in yield that we saw? And I think a lot less work goes into trying to capture so I think there's like multiple issues around around like how so how we can scale the systems better. I think grid interaction, I mean, for systems that are already been installed that have like very low utilization, grid integration could be a good idea. But yeah, there's again several issues that we need to tackle. I think like, yeah, just we're probably running over time, and I'll sort of like stop there, look forward to Q&A, and hand it over to Aditi.
Thank you, Anjalji. Yes, you are saying that we are a bit of running out of time. Now, I'd like to hand over to Aditi for just making main highlights, summarize the thing, and conclude it. Because of time constraint, we might not have time to discuss, ask the question to each panelist. There is a question and also answer is there, Q&A. Would that be fine,
Yes.
Aditi? Yes.
Yes, I think, but I feel that we have engaged with all the audience questions. There's only one left meant for Resha. Yeah. I think Resha, if you can put in your views there, we would have dealt with all the audience question. And I think this was an absolutely fascinating discussion. I'm sorry, I have to switch on my video because my Wi-Fi went and I'm using my phone 4G. But what I want to say is that this is the 4th webinar of the series, and I can say that this has been one of the most engaging discussions that has opened up a lot of very fundamental questions. What are those challenges? The challenge is one of underutilization. So that's a bit of a puzzle. As Ram was saying, why are farmers, when they are getting a zero cost margin, almost free of cost, why are they not? So there perhaps may lie in the overall overall agrarian distress. We need to look at issues like, is crop farming even profitable? Is growing vegetables profitable when we have open borders and farmers on the India side get subsidy, farmers in Nepal side don't get subsidy? And perhaps that is one of the reasons we are seeing a lot of interest in aquaculture, because there's a ready market for fish in Kathmandu. So I think we cannot look at solar pumps in isolation from issues of agriculture and the larger political economy of agriculture. That's something I think our impact evaluation group will also look at in detail when we start our field work in March, which we were supposed to do last year, but we couldn't do because of the pandemic. Then then the other point that came in was, is the grid connection even a solution? I feel again, the solution that we have found from the 4 webinars so far, we have found that there is no one solution in any country. And all the countries, because we are still in a nascent stage when it comes to solar pumps. We have 40-50 years of experience with diesel pumps, with electric pumps, but solar pumps only 2 to 3 years. And this might be a good time to experiment with a lot of things and learn whether it works, whether it doesn't work. In view of that, while there are a lot of legitimate questions around even the utility of grid connection, I feel that let's experiment and see what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages. In that spirit, IWMI in cooperation with AEPC and NEA would like to go ahead and do this one small pilot in one of the Gaon Palikas in the coming few months. Then I think Madhusudhan Adhikari sir and all of you raised very important questions about sustainability, both sustainability from income generation point of view, are farmers earning enough income? And also, he also raised the question of sustainability from a technical point of view. Are these solar pumps being maintained and operated properly? And one of the solutions could perhaps be training of technicians. You know, in every village, we have technicians who can easily repair a diesel pump or an electric pump. Can we aspire to have a similar cadre of technicians 10 years down the line who can repair these solar pumps? So in a very small limited effort, our project is again working with AEPC in training some of these technicians. The training starts in the end of February. We are collaborating with one of the CTVT institutions, and we will keep the group updated about the training. We will do this training every year. So I think with that and with some of the excellent presentations, I just don't have anything more to say right now. We would be sharing the results of this webinar. All the questions I think have been answered in Q&A. Whatever has not been answered, we will answer via email. And I wanted to say that, as I said, this was the 4th webinar in the series. We had a scene setting webinar on Monday. We had a webinar focused on India on Tuesday. Yesterday, we had a webinar focused on Bangladesh, where a lot of these answers that you were asking, fee for service model, Bangladesh has one of those models. So that was again fascinating webinar yesterday. This afternoon at 2:30 p.m. Islamabad time, which would be, I think, 3:15 p.m. Nepal time, we have a webinar with Pakistan team, and they would be talking about the challenges of solar irrigation in Pakistan, where the context is somewhat different with very severe groundwater overexploitation. And in the last webinar of our series, we will be talking more focus on groundwater. I noticed there were some questions around groundwater in this webinar also, and trust me, in all the webinars so far, people have asked, what about groundwater? So tomorrow we will answer this question. So if you have time and if interest, please join these webinars and help us learn more. With that, I hand it back to Manohara ji. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aditi. Also, I'd like to thank you all, our distinguished presenter, panelists, all the participants for your kind time and also contribution. We are very much look forward. Whatever we generate through this kind of extension on solar in Nepal will be really definitely opportunity to exchange at different levels, so that our learning from the field extensions can be really best utilized for policy making processes. I'd like to thank you, Madam Kiran, for your valuable time also, and giving your some sort of thought for this new idea of connection, microgrid connection to ship, solar irrigation pump and all. So having said that, I will not take time. I really thank you on behalf of International Water Management Institute, and also thank you, Aditi, for being here and also providing your reflection at the end, and we'll stay in touch. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Madhusudhan sir, also.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. I think let's collaborate and let's move ahead.
Yes.
We definitely want
so
a kind of serious feedback from IWMI on our initiative.
Yes.
This is
Yes.
just started. We have to improve it and decide whether we should continue it or to have some modification in it so that we have more impact. This is the government program, so there will be a lot of pressure from, as Kiran madam also suggested, it's a popular program, but how to make it sustainable is an issue. So
Yes.
this kind of technical support from you people will be very valuable. Let's work together. Thank you for organizing it. It was a little disturbing day in Kathmandu, so there was some issue, but I think you will send all these finding reports. I would like to have the report in full so that we can have a proper review of it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vishnuji. Thank you, Aditi ji, and everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaskar. Thank you, Ranju.
Namaskar.
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 thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Anjal ji.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Yes, namaste.
Namaste. I can't click.